Hello, and welcome back to Fighting for the Truth. Remember, here at Fighting for the Truth, we buy the truth and we sell it not. Just always keep in mind that we can never sell the truth. And why we don't sell the truth is because it's the truth. When you have the truth, you give it away for free. You want to touch as many people as you can with the truth. And that is exactly what we're going to do tonight. Okay. We're going all the way back to Venezuela again because it is still a hot topic and we care so much about that country. I've had comments come in from TikTok, my social media platforms. I've had comments of people saying we don't really care about Venezuela. President Trump has no interest in Venezuela other than making money, but how will the people be better off now that we've captured dictator Maduro? Well, we have the answers for you today because I have a special guest with me on today, Carlos Run. He is a native of Venezuela, now living in America. He was able to escape the Nicolás Maduro's regime. So we're going to let him talk about that today. I don't really have much to say because you've heard other shows previously. If you go back and listen, we've shed a lot of light from an informational standpoint on Venezuela. But today, I have someone here with us who's actually lived it. And so we're going to hear from him today. I'm excited to have him. Again, Carlos Ron, welcome to Fighting for the Truth, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Antoine. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. I've been watching you on Facebook as you just go on your page and go live and you just let the truth explode. You know, you send it out and you're telling people the things that the media won't tell them. And let's be frank, some of the things the media is not aware of. So I thought it would be befitting to get you on the show and let you just pour out in areas that you feel comfortable. Of course, we're going to make sure you and I had a conversation offline. We will not specifically talk about your family that is in Venezuela right now due to the obvious reasons, but we do want to definitely dive into the life of what you've experienced. But before we start, Carlos, just tell the listeners a little bit about yourself. And again, congratulations to you and your wife on your newborn.
Thank you so much. Thank you. As you mentioned, I'm from Venezuela. I was
Mhm.
born back in 1997. The then dictator Hugo Chavez took power back in 1999, so only 2 years after I was born.
Mhm.
I think living in Venezuela was a very eye-opening experience because we experienced a lot of the theory that Americans talk about here in the US. And firsthand, I was able to experience some of what it was regime that by democratic means was elected, and then by democratic means took over institutions, changed the constitution in its first year, took away people's firearms, implemented the communist utopia that is so called so many times mentioned by different people here in the US. And going further, they really went completely Marxist by taking businesses away, nationalizing the largest industries, including the oil industry, the one that so many Americans seems to be a little bit obsessed about all of a sudden. Yeah, we all Venezuelans know because we are born there that we have the largest reserves of oil in the world, and that has been the case way like since forever. So um, I find a little bit shallow the point that many Americans make today about oh yeah, it's only and explicitly about the oil. Well, if it was only about the oil and nothing else, the oil has always been there, right? So and Venezuela has always been close to the U.S. So uh, there is something else that happened in Venezuela. You know, Venezuela used to be the richest country per capita back in 1950, like the fourth richest country per capita back in the 1950s, and now is the poorest country in South America. So something happened, and what we Venezuelans have experienced, we people from Venezuela have experienced, is that we ended up having a dictatorship that implemented a communist regime who finances Cuba, finances China, finances Iran, Russia, and every single bad actor that you can think around the world. And the reality is that they destroy Venezuela by implementing communist policies. And the reason why we can say that is because there are some other countries in the world that are corrupt, but people are not starving in the streets just because they are corrupt. A good example of that is Iran, which is definitely what's going to have protests after what happened in Venezuela, because Venezuela gives them a lot of the oil revenues that they receive. And that's another story that is recently happening. But you don't see people necessarily having the same hardships that you see in Venezuela. And it's because even though Iran has a lot of issues, it's not necessarily viewed as a communist country. So I, I think a little bit of light I can shine about being born in Venezuela is that my coming from a medium coming from a medium family, a median income family. Growing up, I just had a normal life, went to school, and as I started getting older, I started noticing that things were changing radically. And the first thing I noticed was that you at some point you were losing electricity in your house because of blackouts, and that's because the infrastructure of the country was deteriorating rapidly under the regime of Hugo Chavez. Their foreign investment wasn't happening, and truly, if you want to know about a fun fact, is that the U.S. maintained a lot of the infrastructure for Venezuela back in the days, and that changed once the oil industry was nationalized, and a lot of that infrastructure is not even operating at the same capacity that was doing back in the 1950s. But growing up in Venezuela was a lot of not having a lot of blackouts, not having water sporadically. You will sometimes go 5 days without having electricity or water, not because of a natural disaster, but just because the infrastructure of the country, and the mismanagement of the regime, since they were in power of every industry. And then later on, you will experience nationwide food shortages. Venezuela was very well known for having food shortages, and the reason for that is because the government decided to nationalize the grocery stores. And once they did that, they forced people that were owning those stores not only to give it away, but also to start selling products at the price that the government was imposing. Therefore, many of them just decided to just close their grocery stores, and they were then open by the government. So you had massive shortages, and the solution that the government came up for that was to rationalize the food. So what they did is that, let's say that in your ID, if your number ended on the number 5, then you will go on Wednesdays to the grocery store to get the products that you needed for the week. That was your day to go and get products at a cheaper price, or just to buy essential products that otherwise will not be sold to you any other day. So if you wanted to buy toilet paper, or if you wanted to buy um, essential items, you could only go this certain day of the week. Um, and we also went through hyperinflation due to government spending, and not only that, but the amount that government printed of money to try to subsidize all of these things. Well, what ended up happening is that people were using the highest bill, the highest currency bill that you could have in Venezuela. They were using those bills just to make little figures and what you call it, a little yeah, they will just using those papers for using those bills as paper, because it turns out that those bills were worth less than paper itself. So that's a little bit of what I experienced going to Venezuela. Going to the movie theater with an absurd amount of cash in my hand, because that's what a movie ticket will cost. Just having, if it was like $1 will be worth thousands of these bills. So um, so yeah, any kind of messed up communist communist policy that you can think of that might have been already proposed here in the US in recent years, we went through it on steroids. So so yeah, that was a lot of my experience living in Venezuela.
Well, you said a lot, and what I want to do, I want to dissect some of that because myself and many others, we've talked about it time and time again. We hear it on the news, and I want to specifically focus for a moment on socialism. Now, I took a lot of flack for this, and people say, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You're saying communism and socialism go hand in hand." And I said it on open air, and I still maintain that at some point those two interconnect with one another. And I said at one point, you cannot have socialism without have communism. People will argue that fact. The fact of the matter is, socialism leads into communism. You know, and you lived it, and you tell me if I'm wrong. And so the deal is, we're looking at New York Mayor Zoran Mamdani. I said it. Hundreds of other podcasts have said it. That's on the right. Do not vote this man into office. He told you what he's going to do, and he's already beginning to align it. But one thing he talked about was free grocery stores. He was going to make grocery stores free. And what I said on the show, Carlos, that it is impossible to have a free grocery store ran by the government. It does not work. And one thing I mentioned, how does it work for people that are on welfare, who obviously that's from the government of assistance? How do you pay for goods? Do you go back and get the same money that the government gave you and put it back into their system, or do I, it doesn't even make sense. And of course, these questions wasn't answered, but I just wanted to know about the welfare portion of it, and let alone a person who actually, like you and I, who go to work and make our own money. And I'm not knocking anybody that's on welfare, neither am I downplaying that, but I'm asking a real specific question, because how does that look? And you said it yourself. One of the ways you all had grocery stores, you went by your driver's license number at the last digit, and that was the day that you went to the grocery store. So could you imagine not being able to go to the store anytime you want, anytime you needed to, last minute items? Look at the holidays when Thanksgiving come around. Many people they shop at the last minute, or they forget something at the last minute. They need to run to the store. They wouldn't even be able to do that under what you're telling us when it comes to socialism. So my question to any person out there that's still buying this myth that socialism is going to work, you just look at the grocery stores. Carlos, he talked about it, but Carlos, my follow up to that grocery store question is this: what would happen if you didn't go on your specified day? Did you just miss the grocery store for that period of time, and you waited till your number came back around again?
Yeah, so it was kind of like playing tag at home. Like, if you had, because we had a family, it was like, well, we all have different numbers. So we will go. So like I remember my mom and I having the same number. So I will, my mom sometimes will even pull me out of school for a moment just to take me to the grocery store with her, because if you were going after school, then the lines were way longer, and you will stay there for hours. And sometimes you would go even though it was the day for you to buy toilet paper, because what's the only day that you could buy that. I remember that because it was so ridiculous that you had to do that. So um and then you will have, sometimes they will run out of it even before you got to the front of the line. So you were kind of like praying, like, well, I hope that I get this item, because even though I'm making this line, that it's not guaranteed that I'm gonna get it.
Right.
So if you then went with, I had a sister, I have my sister and my dad, and like we all kind of like will play tag on, like, well, we need this thing. Is this your day that you could go and get it? Or if not, well, I guess we'll have to wait until that day. But that's kind of how this dynamic worked. It was a lot of struggles to do very common things that you will never even think about not doing in a free society. So I like to say that it is easy to be a communist in a free country, but it's harder to be free in a communist country. That's really the challenge, because being free in a communist country is definitely something you cannot do. But, it's easy for any communist person to just say they're communist in a free country. You can say whatever you want.
That's exactly right. Carlos, how does it feel living here in America to be able, and this is something that we take for granted here in America, and you heard it from Carlos, how does it feel to be able to go to the grocery store any time of the day if they're open, any day of the week, and purchase as much as your money can buy and as much as you can afford?
Oh, I'll tell you something. If I invite anyone that is watching this to go on social media and just look it up on any platform, and just look up reaction of a Venezuelan or a Cuba seeing a grocery store in the U.S. for the first time. You will be blown away with videos of people that is the first time they arrived to America, and this was my experience, and you feel you're in Disneyland. There is no other kind of like way of putting it. There are many of them that cry being there, just being on a Walmart, like your common neighborhood grocery store. They get there and they just break and start crying, because they cannot believe what they're seeing. They cannot believe they can see just all of these products in one place, and that this is accessible for them to get. Because let's be honest, like getting food in the US is not particularly hard. Any job can get you to get some food on your plate. There are other challenges that we can talk about, and they're hard to get, but definitely getting food is not one of them. And even though groceries can go up and everything, but at the end of the day, you the the vast overwhelmingly majority of Americans can go to a grocery store and get the products that they at the very least the products that they want. So it's really that's the experience of Venezuelans, Cubans, and any person who's coming from a communist regime is really going to the grocery store and really having a very emotional experience there. Um, I have friends that have, they were visiting the U.S. from Venezuela, and they will take pictures, like their favorite pictures were of them grabbing food in the grocery store and being like, "Can you believe this? Can you believe that I'm finding this thing here?" So it's very exciting. It's actually, I mean, I even get excited just by the question, because it's an exciting moment for anybody who knows how this system works back in their country. So yeah, I invite anybody. These are videos. I'm not making this up. These are videos you can easily search, and you're gonna, there are many reels that actually have like millions of view of people just crying when seeing grocery stores for the first time, and they are from people from Venezuela and Cuba.
The title of this show is Inside the Life of a Venezuelan, and that is you, Carlos. You look at the things that we take for granted, as simple as going to the grocery store. And as you know, you've been here long enough to see it. We have so many people that are going into stores, grocery stores included, and they are ransacking the grocery stores, walking out with tons of food, not paying for it. And we listen to you, and you have people over there now, currently, who friends and family who are not able to even do that. Just imagine, could you imagine being able to go in the grocery store in Venezuela and just take things off the shelf? And I'm not condoning stealing, but I'm just saying to be able to walk out with it because there's so much
That's
of a
right.
plethora of items. Could you imagine that? That's something that we take for granted here in America. And
Mhm.
our most poorest person compared to a poor Venezuela doesn't even touch the surface. And you said it. It's 100%. Our poorest and our most homeless person right now living in America would never touch the surface of what you all have endured in Venezuela.
Yeah, yeah, and you got to. Uh, there has been points in times in Venezuela where it has gotten so bad that it didn't really matter if you had money or not. You just couldn't find food or medicines. Like you just couldn't find those things. It didn't even matter at that point if you could make money. You just couldn't find those things.
Very sad because we look
Yeah.
even at our medical, and you brought it up. Great thing to bring up, medical, which is overpriced in America, but we still have the best health care. We're able to go into the store, even with this little allergy cold I have going on. I could literally go into the store right now and get over the counter medicines that will remedy what I've got going on. And we're very grateful to have that. But the reality of it is we take it for granted, myself
Yeah.
included.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt that there might be some issues, like in any country that we have with the medical system. But the reality is that this also gets very widely overemphasized in social media, and I have noticed that it comes sometimes from people from Europe where they think like, oh, look at the American medical system, like they have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in a bill or $1 million bill. It's like, yeah, wait a second. Like there are issues, and yeah, you could possibly get a bill that is hundreds of thousands of dollars for a major surgery or something. But the reality is like nobody pays that. Like the reality is that 95% of Americans have an insurance, and you will get a deductible, and you will then pay that deductible for the year, but no one is gonna make you pay $1 million bill. Like that's not
Right.
realistic. Even those people who are not insured will not pay it either because they have programs for those people to actually pay something reasonable. So this gets like very like a little bit dumbed down on social media many times, when the reality is like that's not near to what the reality is.
Yeah. And yet they still complain. And here you are telling us, okay, because it's going to go very far with our conversation today, and you're telling us that the essentials that we're so much complaining about here in America, you all don't even have access to those items and those responsibilities
Right.
and amenities. But what I want to say too, and while I'm on that track, when you look at and the grocery stores, like I said, is very amazing. But this is something that we're going to watch in New York if it goes forward, and I
Yeah.
pray it doesn't. But there's no way these government-owned grocery stores are going to survive in any state, but a state where it is heavily populated, the most condensed city in America, and you have so much people that are migrated into that area, right?
Yeah.
There's no way that they're going to be able to sustain giving out if they plan on giving out free food to everyone. I don't even know how. Again, I don't even know how it looks when it
it
comes to
will.
this government store.
Yeah, it will not work. I mean, you brought up Soran Mandami, and the reality is that Mandami is a member of the DSA, which is the Democratic Socialists of America,
That's
and
right.
this is like the most Marxist organization that, well, not the, but maybe next to Antifa or close to Antifa,
Sure.
but this organization, it's they send their members to countries like Venezuela.
Mhm.
They try to fool Americans telling you, no, we want to be like the Nordic countries. We want to, that's what we want to imitate. But then they send all of their members to places like Cuba, Venezuela, uh, and and China, like any communist place that you can think of. They meet with those dictators in those places, and then they come back, and when they are having any kind of intellectual conversation, they will then bring up like, no, we just want, we want to be like Denmark. Well, like one thing that the Nordic countries have is that they have actually a lower corporate tax rate. Another thing that they also have is that they don't have a minimum wage, and and uh, and another thing is that it's easier to run businesses and to start businesses in those countries that it even is here in America, because there is less red tape to start businesses there. So if you really wanted to be like those countries, there are certain things that you want to imitate. Not all of it, I will say, but there are some good policies that we can actually learn from those countries about. Definitely not the ones being promoted by the DSA, as they obviously indoctrinate a lot of their members to go to these Marxist states. And Soran Mamdani is just one of them. That's where he was before running for mayor of the city, and his ideas in reality are just not going to work. I doubt he's going to be able to uh, implement any of these ideas that he has mentioned. He has talked about government housing, and I don't know if you have seen some of the interviews with the people in New York about uh, government housing, but people that support it, when they are asked if they would like to live in one of them, none of them do, because government housing actually does exist in New York. He just wants to expand it, and no one likes to live there because those are some of the most horrible and deteriorated places to live in.
That is 100% correct. It's there, but why would you want to live in a free environment if you're able and you're willing to work and you have the means to work, the ability to work, and go? I always say it, go get it for yourself. See, the thing about, and you know this better than I know it, and most that's watching this show right now, socialism never works. And they've tried it. Your country's tried it, and we see where it is. And so we have said it over and over again. Socialism equals a utopia, non fictional reality. It's not going to happen. It is not going to happen. It is no way. I keep saying it. There's no way a state, a city, okay, and a country can survive off giving everything away for free. It
Yeah.
does not make sense, and it will never happen. A
Yeah.
man who doesn't work, he can't eat. That's what our Bible tells us, and that is
Right.
100% true. Now, when you look at, and I'm going to move on from that, but I want to ask you another question because I've
Sure.
seen it, read it. When it comes to, we're going to go back into the rationing of food, but also taking away your food and your means to get food. Is that what we saw on the news? Is that something that really took place? I've spoken about it, but were some people trying to literally find food and comfort in dumpsters and trying to get leftover items that was discarded because they didn't have any other means to eat?
Oh yeah, no, that there are many stories of people eating their pets, eating their dogs, and
Mm.
not only that, there's stories about people going to the zoo and getting the animals from there and having to eat them because they couldn't find food. So that's what we're talking about. Like, we're talking about people literally starving everywhere. Like, even the poorest people here in America have food banks, and I mean, you're not gonna miss a meal here in America, even if you are in the poorest stage that you can think of, unless you really have something else going on, like maybe a drug addict or something else. But the reality is like uh, we America is a pretty awesome place to be, and it's a most amazing place to be on earth, if you ask me. And even going back a little bit about the Mandani policies and how you could possibly get um, these things to work. Let's put as an example, even in the Nordic countries that we touched on earlier. They it's not the rich who's paying for these welfare programs that exist there. It's actually regular people. Regular people are being taxed 50% plus in these places. So you just tell me how it sounds to just, get a free healthcare, but they take over half of your income. If you ask me, it sounds very depressing. And that's why most of the great companies that exist worldwide are American companies, not European. There is only like the top 10 of the top 10 most wealthy companies in the world. 9 of them are American and 1 of them are from Europe. So you tell me, how good are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense. And when you talk about those particular matters, it's very obvious that we are a country here in America that thrives off success, despite what the left tells our generation that is up and coming and the ones that are becoming young adults, Gen Zs and millennials, telling them that this country is built on racism. There's no room for the black man to succeed, black and brown. Our oppressors are the white man, but yet every day we're able to, if we feel free to drive through a McDonald's or sit down and eat a steak at a steakhouse. That is how free we are in America. And we're so free that we can go out and protest and hold signs up that tells us that it's okay to change our gender and do all these things. In a socialist society, a communist society, you all don't have the means and the rights to do that.
Yeah, absolutely true. Yep.
Absolutely. And what I want to say, just for a brief second, I hope everybody understands this and it makes sense. Why do you think the first thing a dictator does, and we can even go all the way back to the communist himself, okay, Adolf Hitler, why do you think he starved all of those Jews? Because without food, you have no nutrition, you can't fight back, you're not strong. That is one of the things that they do want, I'll say 101 of dictatorship: starve the people, get them to be weak, of course, take any means of weapons from them so that they cannot start a militia to be able to fight against whatever this regime is. Of course, Chavez, and then, of course, Maduro, which you lived under. That is the number one thing to do. You got to starve them, you got to weaken them, and then you move on to the other steps that requires socialism and dictatorship to rule over them. Now, what I want to talk about next, Carlos, why do you think your country, which has endured all of this suffering, has not been able to bond together and try to overtake the regime? Why do you think that hasn't been possible?
Well, you touch a little bit on that, and it's definitely keeping people weak, and that starts with taking their main mean of protection, which is the firearms from the people, and that's that nothing can make you weaker than literally not being able to defend yourself. Um, but then everything is psychological. Like hundreds of people have died protesting in Venezuela because the military and these are videos that you can easily find anywhere, run over protesters with tanks, and they kill their own people. And we recently found out, even with the latest military action from the U.S. where they successfully captured Nicolás Maduro, that even though Maduro had denied even to Congress people here in the U.S. that he had any association with Cuba, that he said many times, like, my security has nothing to do with Cuba. During that operation, most of the people who died were not Venezuelan nationals, were actually Cubans. And we know this because the Cuban government went on X and told people that at least 32 members of their security forces had been killed during that operation. So the closest security ring of Nicolás Maduro were Cuban nationals. And that's why uh, uh, President Trump was so quick on turning towards Cuba right after this happened, because he knows that Venezuela and Cuba are intertwined in many ways. In many ways, this is something that since I was a kid we have known, because people who left Cuba, many of them went to Venezuela looking for a better future when it was a prosperous country back then. And they told Venezuelans not to elect this guy, Hugo Chavez, because they said, this guy is just like Fidel Castro. You should not elect this guy. And, Venezuelans thought they knew better. They said, we're not an island. We are an amazing big country. We have the largest reserves of oil in the world. We have look all of this. We have so much. We could never be that. That's not possible. And well, we had to learn the hard way that, and after 25 years, after more than 25 years, it's been actually 27 years of dictatorship, that yeah, they were right all along, and they knew this back then. And we also later knew that Fidel Castro and Chavez were always best friends, because they shared the same horrible ideology that destroys so many people. 90% of Venezuelans live in poverty, and over 50% live in extreme poverty, which means like they really starve every day. There was this cynic phrase from the Maduro regime that they started calling the Maduro diet. And it came to be because people in Venezuela were actually losing, in average, around, I believe, 10 pounds. Like the whole population was losing weight because of the fact that they couldn't find any nutrition in the grocery store. They couldn't feed themselves. They were all starving. So this is something that keeps repeating. We hear the same story in the when we read about the Soviet Union under Stalin. And if communist regimes, socialist regimes are good at, is to make sure that people are starving. That's something they do very well.
Wow. And you said it right. Birds of the feather, they flock together. That's a saying. And that's what Hugo and Fidel did. Like you said, the same ideology. And we look at Cuba, they're in the same boat you all are, except you all have always been on top as a country because of crude oil and other minerals that you have. But that crude oil is number one. And you said it at the beginning of the show. You went from the third or the fourth richest country, I talked about it on previous episodes, in the world, to being a very low impoverished third world country. And the reality is, it did not happen overnight. A decline took place, and it has not been able to get out of that rut. And so we talk a little bit about Hugo Chavez at that particular point, because Hugo, unlike Maduro, was voted unanimously by the folks. And then, of course, when he died, if I recall correctly, I spoke about it in the previous show. Maduro was his VP, right? Am I on track with that? The vice president,
That's right.
and then he took over. And how long would you say? And I know you were maybe not born yet. When were you born when Maduro first took office, or no?
No. Actually, I was a teenager when Maduro took office.
Okay.
He took office in 2013.
Correct. That's right.
And actually, there is strong. Uh, I can say confidently that the opposition won that election,
Hmm.
and he still took power regardless. So he has actually stole the elections in Venezuela in 3 different occasions.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it's something that is interesting about that as well is that the Biden administration, if this is a fun fact actually, the Biden administration released uh, the niece of the two niece of Maduro that had been captured while they were trafficking cocaine to the
Mhm.
U.S. They were captured back in the first term of the Trump administration, and the Biden administration released these people in exchange of Venezuela supposedly having free elections. We know this because Secretary Marco Rubio talked about this recently. So Biden released these people in exchange of Venezuela having free elections. Turns out the elections weren't free, and the Maduro regime ended up getting these drug traffickers back.
Due to a weak president. See, we see the strength. President Trump's first term, they grabbed the hold of him. Okay. And he meant what he said. They did it. And then Biden gets in, and we know he undoes everything. And then we have President Trump again. He doubles down on your country and Maduro. And as the first of the month, the first of the year, the people were set free. Now, I know there's already been talk, and people are saying, okay, yes, Maduro's, and I always say the Maduros, including his wife, they're here in our states, in New York, in jail right now, detained. And then people say, which they're not misspeaking, but you talk more about it. They're saying the country's still not free; it's still being ran by the same regime. So, how does that look as of today?
Yeah,
Being that the female vice president is in charge with Rodriguez, I think that's her name. Go ahead.
yeah, no, that's a great question. So Delcy Rodriguez is a current interim president of Venezuela. She took power, as you well mentioned, because she was the vice president of Maduro. And sources believe that she might have been the one who turned him to
Mm.
President Trump. This is not necessarily confirmed, but the truth is that the current regime is very nervous about who is the rat inside of the regime that basically gave intel to the US to be able to capture Maduro. So they, I believe they're very nervous about it, and they are basically bending the knee to President Trump on everything that he's requesting at this time. My suspicion from what's going on is that playing they are playing with fire right now because they think that they might be able uh, to play games with President Trump and just wait for his term to end. So the next president, if being a Democrat, could release Maduro and leave them alone. Um, I I don't think that they are gonna run with the luck that they think. I believe that President Trump knows very well what's going on because he has someone close to him who knows very well what what's happening in Venezuela and in Cuba, who is Marco Rubio. And he has been designated not only as Secretary of State but to other three positions during the Trump administration. So he's not a minor, um, he's not just another guy. He understands how this works, and he's the main person having this conversation. So if you ask me, I trust the process. I do not think Venezuela is free today, but I think that Venezuelans are very grateful. Every single Venezuelan that you find on the street will tell you we are very grateful to President Trump for getting rid of a dictator that has his hands full of blood. not of many innocent people for only speaking out about or speaking out against his regime. So that's the situation today in Venezuela. Another thing that is happening is that there are political prisoners. It's estimated that there is well over 800 political prisoners, almost 900. Um, and there is an actual list of who those people are, because the UN has kept a list of who every prisoner is, and 87 out of these people are foreign nationals. Not even Venezuela, only Venezuelans. It's a lot of people who were just reporters and people that went to just uh, talk about the situation inside of the country, and they were captured. But the government keeps trying to play this game where they say they have released something around 400 political prisoners. The truth is that as of today, there is about 60 people that have been released, and there have been reports of a lot of not a lot, but of a few bodies being just dropped in lakes and rivers, because it's believed that a lot of people could possibly be dead, and as well as many people that are so badly tortured that the regime themselves is trying to hold on releasing anybody if they ever do, because of the repercussions of the international community uh, having having to show that to the world. So it is a very tense situation about that part, because we're talking about people that were uh, put into a torture chamber just for thinking differently. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's a transition. And in the bright side, the leader of the opposition is actually meeting tomorrow with President Trump. So Maria Corina Machado, the one who won the Nobel Peace Prize, is meeting with President Trump tomorrow in the White House, which will then definitely keep advancing the, uh, in my opinion, soon transition to democracy in Venezuela. I think that these people, I mean, the U.S. government still have all of their military equipment in the coast of Venezuela. So these people are truly playing with their lives if they don't collaborate with the U.S. government. So we'll see what happens, but there is no doubt that what President Trump pulled was a mastermind thing that only the US could have done, has never been done before, really, because yes, there have been a lot of successful missions done by the US in the past, uh, such as even in recent history happened in Panama, with Noriega, Manuel Noriega in Panama. The U.S. went and captured him, but that operation took a few days.
Right.
And fun fact, he was captured on January 3rd, the exact day, the exact same day that Nicolás Maduro was captured. Um, and it also happened in Grenada, where they even celebrate Thanksgiving on the day that they were on the day that they were free from the U.S.
Yeah.
So like recent history there about successful missions, but it will be a transition. It will be a transition that we are all watching closely, and I think that if the Venezuelan government miscalculates, they're playing with their lives. It's a dangerous game if they don't uh, collaborate with the U.S. government.
That's absolutely true. See, I'm wearing this MAGA hat for a reason because I've been MAGA. I've been MAGA for day one, but I also support President Trump. And many people always say, "Well, why did he say this?" And I say, I cannot uh, defend what he says and what he does on his personal. But what I can say about him being a president, he champions for America, and as we see, he's championed for Venezuela and other countries as well. And so I want to just go back real brief as we wrap up here. Marco Rubio has been placed in his position for a reason. I love Marco Rubio, very smart Cuban brother. Okay, he's spreading the message and he understands what communism looks like as well and socialism. And you said it best. He's overseeing three, I would even say three of the toughest jobs in the federal government under the president's administration, and he's doing a heck of a job. And if you think that January 3rd was not strategic, you better think again. It was. President Trump wrote a book that said The Art of the Deal. He's a deal maker. That's what he does. That's why we elected him. And like you said, Brother Run, the Machado, she's there for a reason because there's going to be some things happening. We know President Trump is a guy who we can never predict because he's unpredictable. But what we do know, he's very strategic, and they're just not having talks for no reason. Things are getting ready to happen, and I said that. I put it out there. You can go on Instagram, and people said, "Well, how could they put her Machado and the gentleman, I can't think of his name, into the house?" I said,
Oh, Edmundo
"The
Gonzalez. Yeah,
say it again."
Edmundo Gonzalez.
That's him. I said it, president, and then Machado, vice president, however that looks. But
Yes.
of course, we've heard President Trump say that he doesn't think she's strong enough right now to
Hmm.
take that
And he's
position.
right.
But
He's right. I think it will be a mistake to do so. I think, if you just put her in power today, she will get overthrown maybe the next
right,
day. So,
right,
and it's because, as we mentioned earlier, the military is ran by Cuba, it's ran by Russia, and that's a reality today. Nevertheless, this is a bigger web of corruption that will also that at some point we are all going to uncover. But that's why they are betting on the Cuban regime to collapse as well, and because they know that the Cuban regime uh, depends on Venezuela for their revenue. So yeah, that's absolutely true.
it's absolutely true. And we're setting things up in line. And what we do know, Iran is highly upset. That is why that they
Mm.
are literally taking their adversaries, protesters who are out there trying to speak and counteract what they're doing. They're ultimately upset at America, and they have already been warned. And Ayatollah Khamenei has been in power for so long, I believe since 86 or something like that, 89. He has been in power for very long. And if he thinks that the country of the United States of America is going to sit dormant by and let him literally kill off protesters for speaking their mind, holding signs, there's another thing coming. We warn you, and we know you're upset about the oil of Venezuela, but there's much more to it. China, Cuba, Russia. The fact is that when America said we're going to do something with the president that we have now, okay, not when Sleepy Joe was there, okay. We even got to give Barack a slight credit, but at the end of the day, when other presidents outside of Biden, when they said they were going to do it, they're going to do it. But President Trump, when he says it, it gets done.
That's right. Yeah, and that's to a point I was gonna mention. Like you kind of said, like he's unpredictable. I don't really believe he's that unpredictable. I think that people are used to what we had before, and so they think that when he's saying something, he's just joking about it, and he's just like, oh yeah, he's not serious. He's not truly gonna take Maduro and just get him out of Venezuela and kick him out of there. Like no, he is, and governments abroad are now respecting America because they know that this is not, as you just well said, this is not just a president who's saying words or cute speeches. No, he is a man of action, and if he's gonna let you know before Maduro had his chance. Maduro could very well now be in who knows where, Russia, having stealing all of the money that he stole, having billions of dollars, whatever you want. Like, we Venezuelans wouldn't have care if he did that. Now, he decided otherwise. He decided to mess with the U.S. and to think that the U.S. was bluffing, and now he is in a federal prison where he belongs. And turns out we Venezuelans are very happy about that.
100%. He sat around and danced because he didn't think no one could touch him. And now I doubt he's dancing behind bars. He even said it, come get me. He made this big
That's
deal.
right.
And look what happened. We did it. We
Mhm.
actually made good on what he asked us to do, and we did it.
Right.
Carlos, I am very excited about the future of Venezuela. Uh, I want to allow you to have some last minute words to the Fighting for the Truth listeners, something that's on your heart. But what I do want to say before I forget, you have something very significant behind as your backdrop. You have
That's right.
a picture of North America.
That's
What
right.
does that mean to you, my brother?
Oh, it's I love wholeheartedly this country. I There is nothing that this country has not given to me. Just the chance of starting a place where I can actually talk about. Uh, I can finally talk freely. I can you know be successful without the government getting in the way. And you mentioned to me what are some words that can come out of my heart that I want to say at the end. And in this specific situation where we're talking about Trump administration and Venezuela, I will just ask people who are against what happened to really consider what you're seeing from Venezuelans. And if you are just keep trying to say that Venezuelans shouldn't be happy because of what the U.S. is gonna do in Venezuela, and we understand we have the largest reserves of oil in the world, but if every Venezuela that you meet is happening because of what happened, is happy because of what happened, it might it might have something to do with the fact that President Trump, even if you don't like him, you don't have to like him. But if every Venezuela is happening about Venezuela, it probably means that Trump did something good. And you, again, you don't have to be a person that supports him to understand that if every single person that that is coming from this country is telling you that this is a good thing, it probably is worth looking inside of you, getting a little bit humble about what this is, and consider the testimonies of the people who have lived in this country firsthand, because truly is at the end of the day, you can simplify it to knowing that, yeah, the US is there for oil and nothing else. And well, yeah, that's okay. That's probably like a 2-second analysis of the situation. But if you truly want to hear from the people who have lived through it and they all happen to be happy about it, it probably means that it's a good thing. So that's what I have to say about that.
You heard it there. It makes sense. And I want to add on top of that what Carlos is saying, even though he doesn't need anything added to what he said, but the reality of it is he's saying let them rejoice, let them be excited about what they have endured, and they feel a little bit. I said this before, and I'm not comparing you all to the situation that happened in the Bible, okay, when Moses freed, okay, the people, the children of Israel from Egypt. Ultimately, God did that, obviously, but He
Mhm.
led them out of Egypt. What I'm saying is, America has helped the Venezuelans become free again, led them out of a dictatorship. So let them rejoice and celebrate. Carlos Run, I have enjoyed it. Please tell the listeners where they can find you. at
Yeah,
other social media.
thank you so much, Antoine. Thank you for having me.
My
And
pleasure.
I love that story from Exodus in the Bible. I think that it's an awesome story. I actually even
Yeah.
watched uh, the King of Egypt recently, so it's funny that you brought that up. Uh, but yeah, you can find me, on Instagram, Carlos D Run underscore. And that's usually where I am the most. You can also find me on X. Just look for Carlos Run. You'll see me there. And yeah, those are the places where you can find me. But thank you for having the conversation.
Stay where you are. I've enjoyed it. It's been fun. We actually went longer than what we had agreed upon, but this is great. We could have went much longer, and I plan on doing it again because this is information that has to be um, pushed out to the airways, and it has to be heard. The truth has to be heard, and that's what we do on Fighting for the Truth. Carlos, it has been my distinct pleasure to have you on. Thank you for coming on to take time out of your busy day with your family to shed light on what Venezuela really looks like. We're watching it from you. What's the title of today's show? Inside the Life of a Venezuelan. And at the end of the day, I want to say this as we wrap up. This show, as you already know, it is designed to help those who are lost or who just don't have all the right facts. It is our job as truth fighters to fight for the truth. And that is what we do. We fight for the truth, no matter how it looks, no matter what happens. But we want to bring the truth out to you. And why do we want to bring the truth out to you? Because it's truth, it's facts. You got to do it. You got to say it, whether it's popular or unpopular. I'm willing to say it. Has to be said. Carlos today was willing to say it. We hope you enjoyed this show, but I need you to do me a favor. You already know what I'm going to say. I need you to do me a favor. Would you please do me a favor? Would you please do me a favor? Would you please do me a favor? Buy the truth and sell it not. Remember, you cannot sell the truth. You got to give it away. It's free. We want to give it to as many people as we can. And that's why we brought this episode to you today. Wanted you to know what's really happening in Venezuela. So, as we do this again, whenever we meet again, continue to pray for our country, our president, and for everyone that is serving in our United States Armed Forces. And because I am a police officer, to every man and woman that is serving in blue. God bless you, and we'll see you again. Remember to like, share, and subscribe.